So in Final Fantasy VI, fairly early in the game, there's something that happens that's a little strange when you think about it. It's after you're done in South Figaro, after you've climbed the mountain and met Edgar's brother Sabin. You're finally at the headquarters of La Resistance, the Returners. Here we have some cutscenes where they lay out their story of why Terra should help them. And ultimately, you're going to get on a raft and go back to the city where the game started to try and get that whole city on board. Locke is told to backtrack, go back over the mountain, back into South Figaro, and ultimately get to where you're going on foot. So he leaves first, getting a little head start here. Then, Edgar, Sabin, and Terra, and the leader of the Returners get on a raft to take the river. After a little time on the raft, you then fight a talking purple octopus. At which point, Sabin jumps in the water after the octopus and separates from the party. Now the game does something fairly unique. You are going to play through 3 scenarios that all end with them meeting in the same place. So you will experience the rest of the raft ride with Terra and Edgar. You will see what shenanigans Locke gets up to in a South Figaro now occupied by the Empire. And you will see what happened to Sabin after he chose to jump in the river. The part that doesn't make sense is that these 3 little chapters here are nowhere near the same length. And actually, the order they all get there in makes absolutely no sense. Sabin actually has the longest adventure here. He somehow ends up on the other side of the world, hires a guy to travel with him, stumbles across an Imperial encampment, gets to witness some war crimes committed by the Empire, then fight through the camp with the only survivor of those war crimes, then have to make their way through a fairly large forest in which there is a train station that actually acts as the gates to the afterlife. And yes, Sabin and friends do get on one of those trains, and after an adventure on the train, finally find their way out of the forest to now walk across a vast plain where they recruit a wild boy, have their own adventure in the water, before they finally can get on a boat, which ends his scenario. And I think, in fairness, this series of events would probably take a few days, realistically. Now, Locke, on the other hand, who went on foot, we don't actually see him deal with the mountain. We don't know how long that took. It just starts with him getting to South Figaro and having to figure out how he's gonna sneak around with all of these Imperials around. And you end up stealing the clothes of some different people to wear as disguises. And you have to find some information so you know where and how to sneak out of town in someone's basement. And on your way out of town through this hidden exit, you actually save a woman that's being held by the Empire. She's a disgraced Imperial general. She ends up joining you. And then you fight a big drill monster in a cave, and that ends his scenario. And this is not as long or as eventful as Sabin's scenario, but we do see things weren't exactly smooth sailing for Locke. Which of course leads us to our final scenario. Terra and Edgar and the leader of the Resistance on a raft. You have like 4 random encounters on the river and then you're at the town. That is literally it. There is not more to this one. I'm not sure how much time that was meant to take up in the logic of the in-game universe, but I can't imagine it's very much. But now that you're at the town, Edgar and crew try to convince the leader of the town to join the Resistance, and somehow, during this, Sabin and friends actually gets here before Locke, and Locke comes in basically right after introductions are over with for the new party members. And that's really what's never sat right with me, because based on these scenarios, Edgar and Terra should absolutely have arrived there first, which happens, but logically, Locke should have been the next one to come in. And then Sabin and friends should have been just days, possibly over a week later. And I'm basing that entirely on what happens during the various scenarios. Realistically, Sabin and friends should have completely missed the Imperial attack that happens. But I guess during his travels, Sabin also acquired a time machine somewhere. I cannot think of another explanation. Please do subscribe comment, like, and tell your friends.